Oh my gosh, I heard so much. All right, the meeting is now called to order. Let's go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Tara, roll call, please. Campbell.
Here.
Garbett.
Here.
Fletcher. Present. Barnhart. Here. Baki.
Here.
Mays.
Here.
All right, thank you. All right, we are going to do things a little different tonight. As you can see, we have a lot of people in the audience. We do have a special presentation from American Structure Point. As many of you know, we were recently awarded a significantly large grant, and we all felt it was important to really get out in front of this and kind of explain a lot of the things about this grant. So let's see, Michael, I know Michael's here. And
Sean Mason, but I can kick us off.
okay, is he, okay, all right.
He's here in a minute.
Okay, sounds good. So Sean, if you want to come forward, you have a mic right there. If you could either somehow stay close or you can
Sure.
pick it up, however you would like. Yes, and then introduce your team as well.
Sean Mason with American Structure Point. So we've been working with the village for the last 4 years. I know many of you aren't familiar with us. We just wanted to take a minute, or maybe Michael wants to jump in and talk about some of the work we've done in the village, and then we'll obviously get to the presentation for the downtown concept. So, Craig, Craig is in our roadway group, has led a lot of the roadway work that we've done here. You want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah, we've done some pavement condition analysis and made some recommendations for how to kind of schedule your CIP program of when to get your road sequence done for repaving. Also, curb work, ADA ramp compliance, and some parking configuration. So we'll continue to do that sort of thing as these projects come out and help you with the grant program.
And then Craig will be the design project manager for the work we'll be getting into as well. And then Maddie Fagrell with our utility infrastructure group has been working. Do you want to talk about a couple of things you've worked on?
Yeah, I've been working on projects for the village for about 4 years. I also work on the capital improvements plan, so I'm pretty familiar with the village's various utility systems, the state of the systems, and the village's goals for those systems. We do also, the utility infrastructure group has 2 current projects with the village. So we're working with Derek Kopis and Travis Bonar on the State Street lift station, and also a CIPD lining project. With the infrastructure in this part of town.
Yeah. So that's just briefly what we've done over the last 4 years, kind of some background. I'm very familiar with the infrastructure obviously in the area. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark and your team, and Mark Michael.
Let's do a quick introduction of where we're at. Indeed. Well, hello. Sorry I'm a little late, caught some traffic coming in, but doing all right. So my name is Michael Salvador. I'm with American Structure Point. I have been the kind of point person to shepherd the Village of Georgetown's application for Appalachia Community Grant through to the state of Ohio, from really concept way back when, at about this time last year, actually a little bit earlier with the former village manager, Art Hurst, all the way up until award a few weeks ago at the governor's announcement in Chillicothe. So thought that we would provide a little bit of background, the full story of how we got here, what Appalachia Community Grant is, how we worked with the former village administration to come up with this concept, what the concept is, the pieces of the project, all 3 of them, and where we go from here, which is what Mark and our team will lead through for these slides. So I'm here a little bit for the background. And then when Mark and our team kind of take over, we'll sort of lead you through a little bit of an exercise just to present the concept as it stands and get your feedback. But sort of the headline from tonight is, we want to work with council and with the way you determine is best to make sure that the images that you have in front of you and that you're going to see on the screen later authentically reflect what you want. None of this program, none of this process is meant to be like, all right, take it or leave it. We want to co-create what is best for the village to make sure that everything that we build over the next couple of years reflects the priorities of this community. And I will say at the outset, and I thank Sean for doing the introduction, American Structure Point, we worked with this community for years. We're very proud of our work here, especially creating the capital improvement plan that Maddie has really worked on and shepherded through. And we're just so honored to have been able to accomplish this, not just for you, but for the entire region. And we're really, really excited to be here. The thought that the state of Ohio is investing $8.5 million in Georgetown out of a competitive grant program where there was only $420 million available is really special. And we're honored to be here tonight and to talk through these ideas with you. So with that, a little bit of background on ACGP. In the summer of 2022, the legislature went to the governor and kind of created this idea that, hey, we've got some unspent American Rescue Plan dollars. ARPA was the early 2021 law that Congress passed in the toward the middle to the end of the pandemic. There had already been the CARES Act before that. But the point of ARPA was to help respond to the COVID pandemic. It was actually the last bill that gave us our biggest stimulus checks. If you recall back, we had all three of them. This was the one that was $1,400. But that bill also did a lot more than just give all of us individuals, money. It also provided a lot of money to state and local governments for COVID response. Every individual community in the state, including Georgetown, got some ARPA money. And I know in the past that the village has decided to allocate some of their local ARPA money. The state got a lot of it. And so the state received something like, I think it was $4 or $5 billion. It was a large chunk of change to do programming with to respond as they see fit to the pandemic. So what they decided to do with a large amount of it, with about $500 million, was devote it to the 32 counties in Ohio out of the 88 that are considered to be Appalachia through the way that the federal government measures that metric. So those counties started Claremont, just to our west, and go all the way up to Ashtabula, snaking along the river. So every city, village, county, township was welcome to come up with ideas to apply to that program. They created 2 rounds for that program. The first round was $50 million, and the second round was the rest of it. Now, you may be wondering, why did they do that way? At the time, it was because they felt that there were a few projects throughout the region that were ready to go, that didn't really need a firm like us to come into a place and figure out okay, what could you apply for? Shovel-ready projects, if you will. So round 1 of Appalachia Community Grant opened in October of 2022. And they received some applications, and they ended up funding 4 awards at that time. Most of those awards had projects that were in the southeastern corner of the state. I don't believe that there were any round 1 awardees that were in this area of the state or up in Northeast Ohio, but it was only for a relatively small amount of the money. So to prepare for round 2, the state then did a solicitation where they hired 20 different planning and architectural and engineering firms, and we were one of those firms. And they hired those to basically provide technical assistance to communities to come up with eligible projects for round 2 to receive the bulk of the money. The state, in setting out Appalachia Community Grant for round 2, wanted to make investments in one of 3 areas: healthcare infrastructure, healthcare services programming, including hospitals, workforce development, and community infrastructure, specifically in downtowns. And they provided some guidance about the types of things they wanted to see and some general rules. For example, we'd love to see some investments in community spaces, but we don't want to fund utility infrastructure. And then kind of left it up to the planners and to the communities, they called us all planners, even though we're all a bunch of engineers and landscape architects, to co-create project ideas with communities. So because of the village's existing relationship with American Structure Point and all of the good work we've done here historically, ART specifically requested that the village work with us. And there was a process by which that was accomplished in February and March of 2023. So we were officially assigned to be the Village of Georgetown's procured planner at that time. And in our initial meetings with Art, we talked about community priorities, and he had vetted those with the previous council, and we came to agreement on the types of things that we would work on. And we really narrowed down into the downtown core, the courthouse square, There's some issues in the courthouse square. A lot of that pavement's old. It functions decently well as community space, but there could be more greenery elements added to it. And, some of the curbs are a little bit misaligned and sort of those various ideas. And so we got to work thinking about a concept for what to do with Georgetown's Courthouse Square in order to make it more conducive, not only to visitors to come and enjoy everything that this community has to offer, but to better prepare it for the festivals that occur here year round. And hopefully, perhaps, draw a little bit more visitors into the U.S. Grant Historic Sites, which happen to be here. Now, at the same time all that was going on between the village and us, the Ohio History Connection and Doug McDonald, the local historian from Ripley, had talked a little bit about what might be able to be done with the grant sites. And there were some things that happened in the background that led to some of their ideas maybe not working out as much. But as we got toward the end of the process, like around August, September, October, we started to engage with Doug and with the Ohio History Connection to think about what could be done with the U.S. Grant historic sites here in town. And for a little bit of context for that, Ohio History Connection owns those sites, as they do a lot of other historic sites around the state. And they've got about, don't necessarily hold me to this because I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere between 100 and 150 historic sites throughout the state. Everything from all the presidential homes like James Garfield's home in Mentor and Rutherford Hayes' home in Marion, and some McKinley stuff in Cincinnati, all the way to battlefield sites in Eastern Ohio, and of course the grant sites here in Georgetown. And every year, Ohio History Connection basically prioritizes a bunch of improvements that they'd like to make at their sites, and they have a master list that they keep. And they prioritize all their projects 1 through 120, whatever it is. And they're usually invited every time the state capital budget comes up to submit their top 5 or top 10 priorities. The U.S. grant sites here in town, the Boyhood Home and the Schoolhouse, are always, for even decades, in the top 10, top 15 list of their priorities. But they're never quite enough to ever really get considered by the governor and by the legislature. They're always submitted, but they're just not quite at the top of that list. So they're sort of sitting in a no man's land. And so Ohio History Connection really saw an opportunity to potentially do something with these sites, especially because there is already a plan in place for what to do and some thoughts about how they would put more programming into those facilities and how they could draw more visitors by maybe redoing some of the parking and creating bus turnaround lanes. The tannery site, there's a building there that's really special, but there's another one that's pretty old, so maybe we tear the one down and put another one in. You kind of get the idea of what they're thinking. And so we basically came to agreement that we would submit the Ohio History Connection projects as a separate line item within the village, part of the overall vision for the overall transformation of downtown Georgetown, but as a separate component project. So that's kind of, it emerged around that time as, okay, we got 2 projects here. We have a clearly defined streetscape project in the downtown core that's going to narrow some of the streets in some way, reorganize the parking to move it from some spots where maybe it's not ideal to places where it is. We can talk through that when we get to the concepts. Add some greenery, create the area to be more festival space, but also create a very logical connection for any visitor who comes to Georgetown to more easily access the grant sites. And the Ohio History Connection and the Grant Historical Society here in town have a lot of statistics and a lot of data about the fact that a lot of people from out of town and out of state come to Georgetown already to enjoy these sites. It's not just school groups from local communities that get on a yellow school bus and come here in like March to do a field trip. People actually come and seek this out, history buffs. They're coming to Georgetown already to go see Grant's birthplace. And, you think about presidents, and there's only been 46 of them, I think. I lose track because Grover Cleveland, So, there's only a few presidents, relatively speaking, that have a dedicated place, a presidential library where people go. And when people think of Ulysses Grant, if they think of anything and they just don't really know, they probably think of Grant Park in Chicago. But in reality, Georgetown's got a much stronger claim to Ulysses Grant's life than Chicago does. And so there's an opportunity here to make this place more of a focal destination for tourism to allow this community to capitalize on those visitors and on those dollars. And we wanted to lean into that in the grant application. And so to that end, when we got to the very end of the process, we came up with a third project component, which was the idea of creating some kind of basic visitor center that would welcome anyone who's coming to town for whatever reason, whether they're local, whether they're from out of state, to go there first and then go down and see the Grant Boyhood site, Boyhood Home and the schoolhouse, maybe go out and visit the birthplace in Claremont County and learn a little bit more about Ulysses Grant. Now, this ain't going to be a full-blown presidential library, although that'd be pretty sweet. Unfortunately, he's been dead for 175 years, so there's not a lot of well-heeled benefactors to want to donate a bunch of money like has happened with Obama and Bush and Clinton and all that. But it will be at least a start of something kind of honoring President Grant. And if we're able to do it right, it'll actually be it'll be the single largest spot in the entire country where information about President Grant's life and history can be accessed. So that component was submitted as well. There was a land acquisition piece, and then there's kind of a set aside amount of funds to at least provide us the ability to build some kind of structure at the core of the village at the ABC Tire site. And that project, as best we can tell, was funded. All three of the project components were funded. Now go back and take a step back when we say we're funded. The way that the application worked was that not every community was allowed, for lack of a better way to say it, to submit on their own. The way the state wanted these grant applications to come together was they wanted communities to group up into applications that had a lead applicant with a whole bunch of communities underneath it as sub-recipients. And the state preferred that there'd be some kind of overarching theme to that application. So I mentioned earlier that there were 20 firms that were hired by the state to go into individual communities and plan project ideas. So we were working one-to-one with the Village of Georgetown, and we worked with a lot of other communities throughout Southern Ohio as well. One of our tasks from the state was to figure out the universe of projects, not only the ones that we had as Structure Point, but also the others that the 19 firms had, and work with the local development districts, which are those regional governmental organizations that exist in Appalachian, Ohio. The one here in Georgetown is OVRDC, Ohio Valley Regional Development Coalition, John Hemmings, Executive Director. Work between the other planners and work with the local development districts to find similar projects and group them together. And we spent a lot of work as that group, the planners and the LDDs, throughout last summer, figuring out what that could look like. And at the end of the day, there were two very compelling groupings that came together in Southern Ohio. One of those groupings was riverfront investments. And the state had kind of indicated they were really interested in this, like, hey, the Ohio River, it's spectacular, it's sort of underutilized. What if we could have more people enjoy the river? And in each of these riverfront communities stretching all throughout the entire length of the Ohio River, from Steubenville and even north of that into Columbiana County, all the way down to New Richmond. What if we made investments in those areas? And so an application was put together around that theme. And that lead applicant became the Ironton Lawrence Community Action Organization. So the Village of Ripley got a project funded, and they were part of that application. So Ripley's project was part of ILCAO's lead application. The Village of Georgetown became part of Ross County's and the City of Chillicothe's application. So Ross County is the lead applicant for the Village of Georgetown's project, and the theme of the Ross County application was historical and cultural tourism. Part of why that worked is because back in September, UNESCO declared the Hopewell Cultural Sites in the state of Ohio to be World Heritage Sites. One of those sites is in Newark, in the Mound Builders. It's actually a country club. There's a lot of litigation. It's fascinating. You should Google it and look it up in the paper. Another one of the sites is in Warren County near Cedar Creek, but 5 of them are in Ross County, including 3 of them that are in very close proximity to the city of Chillicothe. So Ross County, which had a project, several projects in a couple of villages and a big one in the city of Chillicothe, put together an application that said, hey, we've got this really unique cultural historical asset, these UNESCO sites. We want to connect these sites to our downtown. But we also recognize that throughout Southern Ohio, there are a lot of unique historical and cultural and recreation destinations. And Georgetown fits very well into that theme, considering the Ulysses S. Grant connection. There are several other communities that fit into that theme as well. One example is the city of Logan, county seat of Hocking Hills. Hocking Hills is the most visited county in the entire state every year. They get more visitors than Cedar Point. And if any of you have ever been there and you stay in a cabin, you probably don't go to downtown Logan. So their project was to try to change that, to put some infrastructure into the downtown core of Logan, to make it more attractive to all the visitors who spend a weekend in those cabins. Very similar kind of connection you can see to the Chillicothe example and to you guys. The theory of change is if we create a more inviting and attractive downtown space and improve the historical and cultural assets that are already here, we will take advantage of the fact that people are coming here anyway. We're just going to make it a lot better, a lot more attractive. And when the folks that are coming here anyway come and they see all the great things going on in Georgetown, they're going to tell their friends. And it's going to become, you can just, and that's why I get really excited and all of us get really passionate. Like, you can see that through line. You can see a world where, like, man, in 3 or 4 years, there might be 3 or 4 times as many visitors coming to Georgetown, not just necessarily to see the Grant sites, like they're coming a little bit for that, but also because Georgetown's a cool place. You guys have got great architecture here. You got historic buildings. You got cool businesses. You got breweries. You got lovely murals on the wall. There's a lot already good here. And so the state found that message to be very compelling. And so that is why we were ultimately awarded. Almost all of the projects inside of both of those applications, the Ross County application, historical and cultural tourism, and the ILCAO application, the Riverfront Development application, in a competitive grant program where there was about $420 million available, where they got about $2.3 billion worth of project ideas across 23 different applicants. Those 2 applications got 2/3 of the money. And that's why we're here today, because we had the right vision in the right application at the right time with the right idea of stuff that the state wanted to fund. It turns out throughout this entire semi-amorphous process that the ideas that you really generated here in Georgetown was exactly what the state wanted to invest in. They wanted to double down on places that are already of note. You guys are a county seat. There's only 88 of them in the state of Ohio that had something going for it already, that had a thriving downtown core, that had an historical asset to point to, and they wanted to put their money there. And they wanted to help you, all of us, make this place even better than it is. And so that is what we now get to set out and achieve and accomplish. And there's $8.5-ish million to accomplish those 3 project components. The vast majority of that $8.5 million goes to the streetscape concepts that we're talking about tonight. Another $1.5 million, somewhere in there, we got to figure it out with OHC, and the mayor and I and several of our team met with OHC on Tuesday. That project will get about that amount that I just said, $1.5 million, to figure that out. And whatever's left, we're going to figure out what to do with the visitor center. I will say, and I'm happy to have a sidebar about it later, that this was a very complicated grant to apply for. There's a lot of details about that. Something happened where there's a little bit of money missing somehow. So we're waiting for the lead applicant, Ross County, to get the actual contract from the state of Ohio so we can see all of the individual line items that were awarded to the village to figure out exactly what is left for the visitor center. but we will figure that out. And once we have an idea of what that looks like, we will report back and do that. It is still our intention to make that visitor center project work, because that would be a really cool addition, both because it would, really kind of anchor the square. It would also help a local business out because it would provide some resources for that business to expand elsewhere. And it would help so we're going to still try to do that. We still some little bit of details are to be determined. But we really want to focus tonight on making sure that the concepts that we submitted to the state, which Mark and Drayson and our team are going to lead you through here in a second, those concepts, what's really cool about this program is essentially it was sort of a backwards process where the state wanted your best foot forward of what you would do. And they asked us to produce a cost estimate to what would accomplish it, but they knew that it wasn't final. And since we were all kind of shooting in the dark, because again, this was it was a very competitive grant program. They got $2.3-ish billion worth of applications. We had no idea if we were going to get partially funded, fully funded, or funded at all. There's some flexibility within the concept that we intentionally designed so that no matter how much we were funded, fully or partially, we'd still be able to do some things. So everything on the screen is generally changeable, and we do want to go through with you and with the community over the next several weeks to really drill down to make sure that each individual piece, from everything from the smallest, brick on a paver for a sidewalk, all the way up to the grand concepts of what you want, is reflected. We have some ability to do things. So we've got some time to finalize this concept. What we would ask is that probably by around the time of the festival, around June 20th, where we're kind of thinking we do some public engagement to present this concept to the community, that we basically have this concept locked in. So we have a couple of months to dream and iterate and think through every individual piece of what you guys want in this project. But we got awarded. And in many ways, it's kind of a miracle because we just had no idea. And so I'll just sort of close before I introduce Mark and our team, who's really going to lead us through this process over the next several weeks, by saying that, this was an adventure, and we are just so proud that this was able to happen and that the state chose to make this investment here in Georgetown. And from Ross County, the lead applicant, on down through OVRDC, John Hemmings, everybody, we're just very excited to work with the village, both us as the design firm and those other entities that I mentioned, to make sure that when all of this stuff is built and open and in the ground and people are using it in 2 years, which is light speed in engineering world, that everyone gets to enjoy it. Because even as soon as next year, this is going to be different outside. And that's just incredibly exciting. It won't take 5 years to do this. It's going to happen very fast. And the impact will be immediate on this community. And we're just thrilled to be a part of it. So with that, if anybody has any questions on process, and you can ask me anything in details, hey, how is this application structured? Happy to answer them before we go through the session with Mark. I hope this was sort of illuminating. It was really only the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to this story of how this came together, but I hope that this answered most of your questions about how this all happened, but happy to answer any questions about that at this time.
Excuse me. We haven't met, but I'm the former president of the U.S. Grant Homestead Association. Been that president for 26 years. Now, first, in the 2022 200-year celebration of Grant's birthday, our organization had 9 or 10 programs throughout the whole year. We had more people in our celebration than all the other grants sites in the country. So we're not just starting out at this.
Mm-hmm.
We've been in existence since 1972.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've talked about having the community involved.
Mm-hmm.
You folks have not contacted our organization one moment, and we've met every month since you've been working on this project.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want the community to work with you, then we're the ones to work with you. We have a contract with the Ohio History Connection to manage the homestead,
Yep.
the tannery, and the schoolhouse.
Yep.
And those murals you're talking about and the statue in Georgetown are doing with the village's help.
Yep.
With the village's help. Now, I would urge the council, if you have any say in this project, that you would incorporate our organization as part of who's going to be the decider as to what projects you do.
As it relates
Finished
specifically
project,
to,
the finished plan, who's going to make that decision?
so there's 3 separate projects. The streetscape project, what Ohio History Connection would do at the grant sites, like you mentioned, the tannery and the schoolhouse and the
I
old home,
understand that.
and then the visitor center. Ohio History Connection will, for those 3 sites, really determine the future
Well,
of those sites.
Let me remind you, we are the organization that operate these sites on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
And I would think that our organization can help make the decisions of what these projects amount to and how they'll impact.
And I think that's exactly what he's saying, Mr. Purdy. That's exactly what he's saying. The one thing that he is
Well, I'm
not,
emphasizing that.
and we understand that, and
Learn from any of these.
But he wasn't in charge of the OHC project. He was just guiding, we just teamed up with them. So I understand your frustration, but at the same time, the Ohio History Connection is the one that led the project, or led the project behind doing the renovation. So,
Mayor, I only knew about what I read in the paper and some emails that we received.
Mhm.
It's wonderful to talk about a visitor center, but who's going to pay for somebody to be there?
the Ohio History Connection.
Your plan is to take out angle parking and put in parallel parking. It doesn't make much sense to us to have a visitor center that's going to bring all these people to Georgetown and not have any parking. Another area.
How about
will
we,
never be a destination community without some kind of a hotel or a motel. Now, my wife runs a bed and breakfast. But either we have another 10 or 12 bed and breakfast like Galena, Illinois, or we have some kind of place for people to stay. Because of the combination of Ripley and Georgetown, that's a 2-day visit. And you need some place for them to stay. We don't have enough rooms to accommodate all these people that are going to come.
so as we start,
I'm not opposed, and we're not opposed. We're not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. But we're concerned about who's going to be deciding these projects. The commission, we put brick sidewalks around the courthouse 5 or 6 years ago. It was beautiful. A year ago, the commissioners took them out and put concrete around. And you're going to come back and tell the commissioners they need to put brick sidewalks back around the courthouse? This has all the aspects of a boondoggle. Without some more individual community planning, we don't want all this money to go to make everything look so pretty, but take out the historical features of Georgetown. And I'm afraid that's some of what's going on.
well, how about we allow him to showcase us and let us see kind of what this looks like? Because I don't think any of us have really seen it.
My concern is who's going to control the details of all this.
He said early on in his speech that there are going to be, over the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, there are going to be groups coming together. So you're going to get notification of meetings that are going to be open where you can come and share your input. That's the whole point. I mean,
We meet on the second Wednesday of every month. And we'd welcome to have any of you all come and share with us, get our ideas or give us what you're telling us. But we're very concerned about this project.
and And I would also say, I would highly encourage you, I've heard you say that you're contracted with OHC to kind of control these sites within this area. That makes absolute sense. I would also encourage you to share your frustration with them, and maybe they can incorporate ways for you to work through that.
We'll do that.
Yes, because again, we just partnered with OHC,
I don't know why they haven't talked to us either.
right?
So why
Yeah.
would we do it?
Yes, that's where I think you should angle some questions as to how these decisions were made, because again, We just partnered. It was, the state encouraged these projects to be partnered together. We did that so that it would make us more able to get funded in the end. We didn't control what they did. That was their project. We just partnered. So but to your point about feedback and being able to give your voice in this project and what happens here, we're opening these meetings up for everyone to come, whomever would like to come, so that we can have these discussions.
This was a total surprise. I didn't know anything about this. I came here for two other things I hope I can still talk about.
Sure can.
But an example, when the Ohio History Connection was going to remodel the homestead, and this is 10 or 12 years ago, they had a designer that specified in his plan that the homestead should be painted a bright red, and the brick joint should be stenciled white. According to him, that was what it had been. We didn't, well, that would have been a joke. And our organization bought that, and they didn't do it. Now, I think it looks a lot better now than it would have been bright red with white stencil marks.
Right.
So just to add to what the mayor said, to answer your direct question about who's going to be making the decisions, I mentioned there were 3 projects: streetscape, grant sites, visitor center. In the case of the streetscape, the village of Georgetown, the council, the community will determine the details of the concept that you're about to see. In the case of the grant sites and the visitor center, the Ohio History Connection will make those decisions. It is the intention, and you came up, the Grant Historical Society came up in the call that we were at on Tuesday, that the Ohio History Connection, as they process the fact that they have been awarded, because again, this was a very competitive grant program, and part of the reason that there was limited public involvement in all communities across Appalachia is because nobody knew what was going to happen here. It wasn't really the appropriate time to get everybody really, really, really excited about something that's millions and millions of dollars and then have it taken away. So now is the time for that engagement, and the Ohio History Connection told us and the mayor that they have a plan to engage the Grant Historical Society, now that this is real, over the coming weeks. And so your questions about the paint and the stencils, all of that is fair game to discuss. Right. I know, I get it. And I know you have many more, right? Ohio History Connection will be leading that process to determine what they would like to do with those sites over the coming weeks. But for the public input, and this is what we're going to focus on today with the streetscape concept, that is something determined by the village and by the community.
Well, are you saying we should work with Ohio History Connection on
I'm
what's
saying
going to
that,
go on at the?
yes, and I'm saying that the Grant Historical Society will be invited explicitly by the Ohio History Connection to participate and provide probably lead input on those projects. There is a plan to do that. So the grant, right, they have not been excluded by any means. It was just as confusing for the Ohio History Connection as it was for everybody else to put this together. They are thrilled beyond measure that this has been funded because, as I mentioned earlier, and you know this very well as being the president, like the grant sites have always been a high priority for Ohio History Connection. And they have always submitted them as part of state capital budget requests for decades, and they've never been funded because the state always found something else to prioritize. So the fact that this program came along and could serve the need and could make the grant sites even bigger and better than anybody thought they could be, the idea that has happened, OHC is processing what that looks like, and they will be including everyone who is involved in that conversation, especially the Grant Historical Society, in figuring that out.
Just one other point, and I don't criticize you all or anything, but there is a U.S. Grant presidential site in Starkville, Mississippi. Now, we think it'd like to have it here, but they put it down there.
Yeah.
But we're sort of second string to the presidential site. But at any rate,
Well, the good news
we
about that is
appreciate
that,
what you want to do with this, with Georgetown.
well, and your opening sentence said it best. When you did the bicentennial, I know I said bicentennial wrong, but forgive me. More people came to Georgetown than any other place. They didn't go to Starkville. So folks already
correct.
associate Georgetown with Grant. And this visitor center, if done right, can reference those other sites. And maybe there'll be a time when, all right, the thing in Starkville says, hey, go to Georgetown. And then anybody who stumbles into Starkville, Mississippi says, oh, Georgetown, that's where I got to go and learn about Grant. That's the magic we'd like to have happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions about process, about how we got here? Any general thoughts before we turn it over into the details of the streetscape?
Is there a reason why they chose the spot they did for the visitor center? Is it just because it's in that aisle? Because I noticed there's been a lot of concern, and this might not be the place to put it, but like, you know, for one, we're losing a tax base from a small business. It's not huge, but it still is a tax base for the village general fund. And, well, I mean, loss of like, I know a lot of people come from Claremont County and actually here in Georgetown currently to go to ABC Tire to get tires repaired for their tractors and equipment and so on and so forth. So, and I've spoke with the owner, and I don't get the security that he's going to relocate in our community. So where it just, and I don't mean to sound pushy at all or hurt anybody's feelings, but it is depressing to me because I've got equipment too and tractors. And so I'm going to have to end up going to places like Hillsborough and give them my business.
Because it's a very fair question, and I will say, and I think there's some work to do with this piece. I'm happy to help however this makes sense. I guess what I would say here is that it was always sort of meant to be a two-step process back in November, December, when we conceptualized this.
Right.
And I think it's probably worth picking up the thread to make sure the second step of that process happens. So I would be happy to talk with Jason and the economic development staff about how to make that happen, because that was always the intention. And we should kind of pick that thread back up as we start to move forward to figure out how to keep that business in Georgetown somewhere.
Well, or look at all the other historic buildings on the square that don't have nobody in them. Plus, I mean, there's buildings that have roofs off of them on that square that ultimately could collapse. Matter of fact, I've talked to this point many times over the last 10 years to previous administrators of Georgetown, and I don't know that I've touched base with the current administrator in regards to this matter, but it just, there's buildings sitting here in this town that don't have business in them that would be real nice to see something happen there.
Of course, and I'd say two things to that. The first is that depending, as remember I said there was a little bit of a budget issue, depending on what we find out, hopefully like tomorrow, but it could stretch into a couple of weeks because the state takes their time with this stuff. We need to see exactly what the contract between Ross County and the village of Georgetown is going to look like, how much money there is. There might be a potential to pivot or a need to pivot. We'll see. So TBD on that. Why that site was chosen was because of its proximity, not only to the grant site, but also the fact that it is a corner and that there's ample potential for parking there, because the kind of facility that this would, the square footage of this kind of facility would not take up that entire site. So there would be an ability for folks to go directly to that area and park, and it would add parking to the village. So again, and by the way, when you brought up the angled parallel parking, no decisions have been made, but it could be a place where parking could go if we, depending on how much we reconfigure the square. So it was sort of thought of as a place where we could potentially look at some level of parking to potentially replace anything away from the square. So that was point number one. Number two is, and this goes back to the theme of the application, the point of this funding source was to create relief from the pandemic. That is the explicit reason why Congress did this bill. One of the main arguments that we used when we crafted the general narrative inside the Ross County application of why these programs would be effective is that by doing these kind of public infrastructure projects, to do, in planning parlance, it's called placemaking. A placemaking strategy is that it would make the buildings that are adjacent to these areas much more conducive to investment. Because if we go from what we have now to something like what's on the screen, the properties in those areas go up in value. And every single one of these communities that was funded is dealing with a similar issue. You've got a lot of great historic buildings. Some of them are underutilized. Some of them are empty. The hope is that this project creates economic opportunity for businesses because there will be more people here. I don't just mean tourists. I mean more people. I mean folks are going to want to come and hang out and eat their lunch on the square now, and enjoy the ambiance and see what's going on. So the hope is, and again, it's never a guarantee with private business, but the hope is that a lot of entrepreneurs here in town will see greater potential for return on investment by buying one of those buildings and doing something with it.
And then one other thing to follow that up. You mentioned earlier that in that grant, there was no money allocated for utilities, just for lipstick and, well, whatever, the grant. Anyways, so is that left up to us to pull from the general fund to make them repairs once this happens? Because like, I know I've got a little restaurant there on the square and another building on the square there. And, well, for one, when they redid that sidewalk that Mr. Purdy referred to about tearing out and then re-tearing out and then doing it again in here, and I'm fine with that. But how long are we going to hold up that? Because I lost a lot of business in that restaurant during that time. And I apologize bringing this up, but I feel it's important for not just me as a business owner, but for the rest of the business owners on that square. So how hard is it going to be? Like, I've got a lot of senior people, so they want to create a wooden bridge to walk across there. And I've got people like Mr. Purdy's age that they're not going to go to that. They can't, you know what I mean? So it affects us. And then going back to the utilities, I know when they tore all that out, they got all of that repaired in that grant. So when we tear all that side out, that utilities has got to be updated at that point, I would assume.
There's certainly an opportunity to do projects in parallel, and everything you said is exactly right. And those are the kind of details when we get into the design and when we get into the phasing and construction, we absolutely have to keep in mind access to the businesses and maintaining that as best as we can when these projects are constructed. We're not just going to turn a blind eye to that. As for the utility piece, you're right. I mean, you don't want to do a streetscape project and then have to tear it all up in 2 years to put in new lines.
Yeah.
So, there's sort of two answers to that question. The first answer is it would be great, and I know there's some things, and Maddie, if you want to speak to it, if you want. We have been working with the village for some time to help you secure funding for certain water, sewer, utility infrastructure. I would like to think that this award makes this a lot more competitive in the eyes of those funders, which are different than the ones that gave us this grant, to say, hey, we really ought to expedite this because Georgetown's got some stuff going on, and we really ought to try to phase it. So the short answer is, as best as we can, we're hoping to get funding through other sources to allow us to do these projects at the same time. And because this project will likely take only, we hope, don't hold us to this, one season of construction, it could be the case that we could play with some of these timelines a little bit. So as we get into this and as we think about utility infrastructure funding sources that Maddie and Kyle Schwederman are putting together to figure out how to get the village some funds for this, if it makes sense to do all this in 2026 instead of 2025 because we get utility money to do some projects, we will do our best to coordinate all that.
Right.
In the event that that doesn't happen, there are ways, and this is where I'll segue over to Mark and our team, to design these things in such a way where the places that we know there are utility issues are the places that maybe we don't improve the most. So that in the event that that thing has to happen, we can coordinate it. So in part because we're just generally aware of these issues in general, but especially because our firm is so familiar with Georgetown and we kind of know where all the landmines are already, we're going to be able to do a good job at making sure we avoid the scenario where we build something next year and then have to tear it all up the year after.
Well, then you guys know then with your experience and knowledge of the streets there that the main area that was not touched was down that area where the visitor center would be located, where the Grant statue is. That roadway on that side was never updated. So it's going to be, unfortunately, an issue.
And
I'm sorry again to go back to all these hard things, but that's reality,
And this is what we want to do both tonight and going forward. Nothing's off the table. You don't have to apologize. These are very valid concerns. We want to hear all of them, and we want to get it all out in the open. That's what we're here to do. And if you think of more,
I will be at all the meetings, I promise you. I apologize for that ahead of time. Because
you're good. This is what we want to do.
Yeah.
This is your plan. Any other questions before I turn over to Mark on process? And if you think of more, I'm obviously still going to be sitting here, but yeah. All right.
Thank you, Michael. So just to answer and you can leave that up. To answer kind of the question of how we got here too, that Michael didn't allude to, is the time, what we're getting now from you is what we relished at the very beginning, but because we're moving so quickly to cast the vision, to get the amount of fee that basically you got awarded, we had to move very, very quickly. And so then when we finally got everything submitted, here we are, and what the running joke was 2 weeks. We're going to hear in 2 weeks what we're going to get awarded. 4 months later, we finally get what we're told we're awarded. So now that's why we're coming back to really understand, does this vision cast meet you as the community? And we're talking a lot about grant, and that's important, but we also know that this needs to function for the community. And so that's why when you look at this, the idea is with off of State Street is to get people's attention, the visitors. Hey, the square is up this way. And so as you look at this, we're looking to improve the intersections, and then as you come into the square, to improve the pieces around the square. We know parking is a very important part to the businesses and the hospitality. That is something that's gonna have to be thought through. And we know we can't lose a ton of spaces. So it really comes down to, as we get into lane widths and those types of pieces, we're gonna have to come and work together to make sure, again, we know businesses cannot lose parking spaces, so we're gonna have to work through that. But the whole idea was to create a place that, again, is hospitable, understands the historical significance of what this courthouse is, and then also it creates a space that the community can be proud of, gather around. So when we look at Maple Street and why the visitor center is on that corner as well, you know, as we were talking, we know you hold a lot of festivals. That could end up being more of a festival street that you can kind of close down that block. You have a visitor center at the end then that you could set up your stage or whatever else, or even potentially, depending on what we figure out with funding, incorporate kind of a stage area even built into that. So that's more or less why the visitor center is placed there as well, but it's also a very good orientation to get you at the corner and get you down to Grant's birthplace. So when you look at this, and we get it, because I was kind of surprised too, around the courthouse, we know that that's been redone. We will need to work through what exactly we want to do in each of these spots, and we do have flexibility to do so. And that's why we're here asking you, as we go through these next few weeks and start really drilling into detail, what you want this to be. And so the idea, again, is to, again, be historically accurate or somewhat with the paver materials around it. Again, just trying to unify it. We know that there's some areas that have brick pavers, some don't. Now the courthouse doesn't. So we're going to need to work through all that. I get it. I've worked in municipalities for most of my career. We were at an Army Corps meeting and they were asking us to rip out some stuff on an island. And it's like, we just spent $5 million on that island. You're going to have, that's political suicide. So we get that. So we're just going to need to work through with you guys to really fully understand the nitty gritty to a certain extent. And you got to understand too that we're working over an aerial and not necessarily a survey. And so really getting into the lane widths, narrowing things. We're trying, especially on the safety point with the circulation, there's a kink in the road. So at that intersection of Grant and Main Street, trying to get that so it's not a trapezoid, so that again for safety for pedestrians and vehicles alike, just to try and reorient that so it makes sense. When we talk about narrowing the lanes, it's more or less just making sure that there's proper road width for 2 lanes and then also for parking. So we're hopeful that we can maintain basically the angled parking that's down there. I think it was alluded to that we're going to go parallel. That would wipe out too much parking. So that's something we're going to need to work through.
So on the front and the back side of the courthouse, from what I'm seeing here, that they would be eliminating that parking. Is that true?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying we're backtracking on that. We're going to need to make sure
Okay.
that we.
Because there's a problem with parking down there as it is. If we eliminate spots and
And
we're,
some of the issues just dimensionally based on safety and ODOT standards, that's why we're gonna have to really get more into the detail to make sure that that's functional. And then it's a question of. Again, on behalf of Drayson and Anna Menchaca, who's on the phone call as well, and Kyle, we are excited. We're excited about the opportunity to work with you guys to realize this vision. And that's, can you reel it back and forth again? Go one more. Go forward again. I don't know why. All right.
That's the same intersection.
Yeah, it's the same intersection. So this is as you're coming. Again, slow down traffic a little bit for pedestrian safety. The park is off to your right, to the back, the Millennium Park is. And so then as you go in, all those pieces, basically the hospitality pieces also help slow down traffic. So that's the idea, to get some shade, to try and unify the space so that you, as you walk into it, again, paying attention to the history. To figure out, is that appropriate? I know there's new signs that have been put down there already as well. So this was just trying to set and cast the vision quickly so we could say, here's what we're trying to do, and we will work with you to vet through what that really means in the final solution. And I think that is it.
Blend in with the rest of the square.
Sure. No, and again, this was a representation of kind of the Victorian era. The idea, the intent was to try and match what's going on around it. Okay, it's a swing and a miss. That's on us. We'll definitely work with you to get what's appropriate.
Any other questions?
I think I do, Kelly.
Yeah.
This might sound crazy, but I noticed it looks like the sidewalks are lengthened and then the planters are there. Is there, fire hydrants, fire chiefs are a little concerned about that. Are there going to be some time where we look at those and,
Oh, definitely.
because, replacement of them and behind that
No,
tree and whatnot.
right, and again, this is quick and dirty to try and get division cast. We will get into those details, make sure all the turning radiuses are appropriate for any type of equipment that needs to get through, any type of vehicle that needs to get through. So yes, most definitely we'll work with you on that.
And again, I think the theme to drive home here is that this is, again, just a vision. We have the money, but now we have to work together to really figure out how we finalize the details and really what works best for our community. So as we start moving forward, unfortunately, it does have to be pretty quickly that we figure this stuff out. So I foresee that we're going to probably do quite a few meetings over the next couple of months just to really talk through some of the details and get an idea with the group here what's best. So,
And it really is trying to prioritize for you, what are the important pieces?
right.
So that as we go through this process, because you have to have to go through a bid process. So when it goes out, and you can imagine if with all these projects going, we need to know what's priority. So if budget comes in high on something, we know what we can potentially take away from. But so that's why it's going to be important that we kind of go through this and really figure out what's important.
And to the public that's here and also listening and at home, these meetings will be advertised. So it will be a shared concept, not just between your council members that are sitting here in front of the room, but through the community as well. So that's important to note. So if you want to participate, we will make it available to participate. But please, please do. Any other questions here for the team?
When
Yes.
it comes to state and federal money, how and who decides what contractors to hire for projects of this magnitude? Are they local people? Are they out-of-state people?
I can take that one. To be determined. This is the single, now that we've gotten through the phase of the vision casting and getting money and all that, and working with communities, from a program-wide standpoint, when you zoom out to the lens of, the state just awarded $420 million-ish of infrastructure projects across 32 counties. That question about how this gets contracted is the major thing now to work out. There are a variety of scenarios that could come into play with that. Like normally, when you do construction contracts, engineering firm designs it, they create specs, they stamp plans, you bid it, and then contractors bid on that. And in that scenario, maybe certain contractors do some parts of a plan like this, because, at the end of the day, what we come up with, we're gonna have, paving, standard like asphalt, we're gonna have paving brick materials, we're gonna have construction of planter boxes, we're gonna have planted trees, there's just a lot of services that are gonna be needed to pull off a vision like this. And so in that normal design bid build world, it's a little complicated because you might need multiple contractors. With this specific program, there is a very, very tight deadline for when all this money has to be spent, and that is October of 2026, 2.5 years from now. So there are alternative procurement methods that have been discussed and studied for several months now from that program-wide level. Construction manager at risk is probably going to occur for the majority of projects funded throughout the entire program. That does not mean that every project has to go construction manager at risk, but it could be the case that as we go through the design process and as us and the village and Ross County work together to figure all this out, that CMAR might be the way that a lot of this gets contracted. In that kind of world, there would probably be a single CMAR hired that would then be responsible for aggregating all of those different specialties under them. But we just don't know yet. So more information about that will be forthcoming.
So the state will probably make most of the decisions, but do they ever bring the council
Well,
to
that
the
point-
table of how do we give, who can handle this scope of work? Are there any local
Can I answer one
contractors
question
that
real
can
fast?
do that? I just,
So in normally any publicly bid project, it's gonna be lowest qualified bid. So any contractor can submit, and then it's based on lowest qualified
on your
bid.
qualifications.
So in the CM, in the example that he's just talking about, the construction manager, he's gonna act more as the general contractor,
Right.
and he will bid it out, and then it'll be based on lowest qualified bid. So it won't be, it'll be decided that way. So it's open field is the point. It's not like the state's gonna mandate, oh no, you can only work with this contract. No, it's open, but it really comes down to the nitty gritty of.
The only other detail I'd add,
CM, that remains to be seen.
That's
what we're trying to figure out.
the only other detail I add, because we mentioned the state a couple times, just so everybody's aware. From the state's perspective, they're basically done with this program. They have awarded the lead applicant, in our case, Ross County, with all of the funds. And it is up to Ross County to work with the communities to figure out kind of what is best. So the state will not be, at any time, ever advertising anything. The advertisements will either come from Ross County itself, or from, which I know is a little weird because Ross County is far away and they're acting on behalf of communities across 12 counties, including Brown. And there's also the Mount Orab project, if you guys have heard about that. The Mount Orab project is also part of the Ross County application, whereas Ripley and Higginsport were part of ILCAO. So 4 communities in Brown County were funded, 2 each in each application. So Ross County and ILCAO are actually the master contract holders, not the state. How all that's gonna be procured, it'll probably either be through Ross County or the CM. It probably won't be the village of Georgetown, but if you really want to do that, we can talk about that. It is an option, but it's probably not, for most cases, it's probably not going to be for most communities anyway. That's a detail, but I just wanted to clean that up because it really isn't the state. The state is out of this program.
Did they just give the money?
Yes,
Or did the federal give the state the
the
money?
federal gave the state money, the state is giving the lead out against the money. And all that occurred over
We're all
3
just
years.
passing our money around.
Correct.
Good.
So with us passing all this money around, the question I had for you, and I'll direct this to you, Jed Braun. Specifically, what is our notification policy on meetings?
Well, are you talking about the public input meetings?
For public notification of council meetings, committee meetings, general?
Well, for a council meeting,
Is it still ORC 121.22?
so our charter tells us about our council meetings, but the meetings they're talking about for public input are separate from that. I think I would probably defer to the mayor, but my guess is the minute we know when those meetings are going to take place, I'm assuming we'll use Facebook and other methods to immediately start communicating about those. Those are not necessarily going to be like a council meeting, but they will be public input meetings.
Public input meetings, but referring back to council meetings, what's the policy for that?
So our council meetings are governed by our charter first, then by the ORC. The least amount of time we can give for a council meeting is an emergency meeting with 24 hours notice. But ordinarily, we need a minimum of 48 hours notice.
Is it still the ORC 121.22?
Not necessarily for timing. It's our charter.
Because if memory serves me correctly, you had said previously that you post them and you were working on a notification policy within the council. And then a year later, I was notified that it was still the ORC 121.22.
So council decides the rules. We did just pass that resolution, and I can take a look at it, but I don't think we changed our notification of packets and our agenda, but I don't think we've changed our notification on notice yet. So, but we do get our agendas out in advance. So obviously, if we're going to be discussing this project, you would have at least a minimum. Tara, when do we send our packets out on the Tuesday?
Typically Tuesday.
So about 3 days' notice, you would have it on the agenda.
So in short, just for clarity purposes, that was a yes, it's still ORC 121.22?
No,
No, it is not.
no. Our charter carries that, and if our charter is silent on something, then we defer to 121.22.
Could I get a copy of what it is currently?
Sure.
Okay.
We can do
And
that.
then could I be notified by fax on the meeting?
So anyone in Georgetown can obviously be notified if they reach out to our clerk and ask for that notification, yes.
Okay. In regards to the project here, are there any additional questions before I let these guys off the hook?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
This is that might be an odd question. When a community like Georgetown or Ripley or all that, when grant money is granted, and let's just
You laid out, yeah, that's plausible. Like, hey, Georgetown, here's this other discretionary grant. It's in 3 years. Well, 3 years ago, you got Appalachia, so maybe you'll take it past this time. I could see that scenario. It's realistic. On the other hand, I could see, hey, Georgetown, you did a really great job with this grant. And now there's twice as many people here. And now we got a utility issue in town because the line sizes, Maddie will scold me for this later. You only got pipes that are 4 inches long. I get she's gonna scold me. Hey, maybe we need more capacity in our water pipes to serve all these businesses that have located here over the last 2 years as a result of the fact you did this fantastic program. Oh, wow, there's a need here. We got to give Georgetown money for utilities, because there's this whole new thing that's come up as a result of this success. So I can't tell you which of those scenarios is true, but I can see it both ways.
Well, go ahead and apply now.
Well, yeah. That is what we are doing. There are other applications that, especially on the utility infrastructure side, that Mary and Kyle and our team have been helping Kelly in the village, Kelly Jones. In applying for them, we're really hopeful and optimistic that some of that might come in this year. And that gets to your question of, yeah, I mean, I hope we get awarded because then we can coordinate projects. That's the ideal scenario.
And it is something we're working on.
Fantastic. All right, well, this was an excellent presentation. Thank you. Thank you to everybody that came tonight too as well. We certainly appreciate you. We're looking forward again to getting started on this and implementing the grant itself. So I'm excited about that by all means. You guys are more than welcome to stick around, or you are more than welcome to make your exit. I'm sure you have a drive back.
Thank you. And the only thing we would ask is you continue to think about it is we are at your disposal for meetings, whatever pace
Yes.
of meetings makes sense. Some communities we're working with are doing them once a week, and we'll be in a couple of them. Others are kind of, we're taking our time, and we may not really do full-fledged public engagement until July. There are scenarios where both of those make sense. So it's really whatever you want. We are at your disposal to think through some options and you have some time to digest it for what the frequency and pace of those meetings will be.
So one other quick question in case I didn't catch this right. This is just a concept right
Yes.
now. So when will we be getting something back that is like within the means of money that we have to spend for the project? And what are you thinking? Month, 2 months, 2 weeks?
It'll be all part of the process. So ultimately, once we kind of solidify what this is, yeah, we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board and get you something, but yes, you will get that.
Right, just in-
So within
after some meetings and
Yes.
discussion and
Basically,
further.
what we want to do, to answer the question, we want you to dream up what you want. We want you to get all your ideas out there and tell us what you want. We'll come up with those ideas. We'll create the concept, and we might say, hey, that's $16 million. And then we might ask you to fund it down for the purposes of this grant, not to throw out the concept, because there's always other funding sources like, hey, man, like, maybe we get like an arts grant to do this thing or that thing. So we really want you to think big, and then we'll figure out the money later.
Like for example, those, the flower beds look beautiful. But it's kind of concerning to me, like adding something like that, because it looks like we lose a parking spot at every one of them points where you go around the square. I don't know if we can do something smaller or something that sets back on the sidewalk, because we've got some pretty large sidewalks. So I don't know if we can do something like that to accommodate that, but like we're short on business right now. If the ideal is to grow and have growth in business, then we're really going to have a problem with parking spots later, because right now, currently, we have problems with parking spots and we're lacking a lot of business in the town. So if we grow as we hope to from this, then we're going to have a whole other problem with parking.
And that's where having these meetings and having the input throughout the process, that's what we're talking about here. They will come back to us after we add our value and what we think, and then they'll come back and put a plan together for us.
Again, I just, right.
Yes.
Because you're successful, that's a good problem.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for, a problem with, but
Absolutely.
hopefully we cut that out before it happens.
Yes. Well, and that's the input we want.
Yes, so that's exactly what we're going to do with
Thank
these
you guys
meetings.
again, and ladies, again, for all that you guys done.
Yeah, we look forward to working with you on this. For your patience.
All right.
All right.
You're welcome. Have a good night, guys. Thank you. And we'll just take a couple minutes here and allow them to exit the room. And then we'll get started with moving on our agenda.
Thank you guys again.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Yeah. We have big printouts of some of the concepts and existing drawings and things, so feel free to mark on these and when we're engaging and come back for engagement.
Right.
Yeah, use these as, please. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, guys. So that was a great presentation, kind of deterred from the agenda as we normally do, so we're going to carry on with our normal meeting now, and we will get started with public comment. I will start over here on my left. Gentleman in the back corner had some good questions for the team here doing the presentation. Do you have any words for the council, or
Or just general?
did you want to speak?
Same subject.
Different subject. We're in public comment. Did you want to comment? If you do, you have 5 minutes. You have to come to. You sure do.
So,
And when you sit down, please make sure your microphone's on, which I'm sure it is, and state your name.
My name is Jay. I've lived in the village for a year now. We liked our sign. We got the speed limit sign. That's cool. It disappeared already, so it must be on another street somewhere. This is a general question. This isn't, no complaints, or I'm not. I know there's a couple people that I've talked to in the community who lives in the village about paying their taxes. How does a person know that they're supposed to pay the income tax? Is that part of your accountant's responsibility to say, hey, you live in the village of Georgetown, you got to pay tax? How does a person know this or find it out?
So if the village has an income tax ordinance, which you can actually access online, or you can come in and get a copy of it. If you are a resident of the village or you earn revenue in the village, even me, as a contractor with the village right now, the time that I'm sitting here right now, I'm paying an income tax to the village of Georgetown based on that income tax ordinance. So if you're working in the village or living in the village, you're required to pay that income tax. But the state puts the burden on you as the taxpayer to make sure you pay that. If the village were to discover that you aren't paying it, then our typical procedure is our tax commissioner reaches out to someone by letter and says, you need to register, file, and then they provide you with the forms to do that. If you go to a tax preparer and they see your address, they'll automatically prepare a return and file that with the village.
So is the village a part of the tax code enough to where any tax accounting firm that you use, it's gonna pop up and says you owe them?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you don't and you prepare your own taxes, and let's just assume, as you play out a hypothetical, you don't file a tax return with the village for whatever reason, if the village catches that when they're running their audits and their returns, they'll send you a letter. And they'll say, just please provide verification that you didn't work in the village, or do or don't live in the village.
I do live in the village. I just didn't know how that was generated.
And it gets complicated because if you're already paying an income tax to another community, you get a credit as well for that. So I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I will tell you that the income tax is a complicated process. So you don't have to pay double taxation. If you're already paying an income tax, like you live in another community, but you're working here, you get a credit, so.
And also, when you move into our community and you turn your utilities on, inside of that packet, there's also communication about having to pay the income tax as a new resident to the community. So as another means to kind of make you aware of it.
I would rather have a bill than voluntarily pay anybody taxes. So, but I reached out to him when I did them for 23. I said, hey, I know some people that were behind and I don't want to be one of those guys. So just tell me, here's where I live, make sure it pops up and I pay. So I did call and they're only open Mondays and Tuesdays. So
Yeah.
I guess next Tuesday I'll pay my taxes. So.
All right. Well, thank you.
That's it. I just wanted to know if there was a way to notify somebody that they owe.
One other thing I would add, sir, you had a very insightful question about the competitive bidding process. And I know even our members of council up here that are in the trades can probably enlighten you to it. But when the bidding opens for these projects, you should be aware that I truly believe that local businesses have an advantage on that, because it costs you a whole lot less to bring your equipment to Georgetown because you're here than a company that's located in Columbus or Sandusky to relocate and transport, especially with fuel costs these days. So I would suggest that if you or other people that you know in the community are interested in bidding on the project we just heard about, or even projects in Ripley or New Richmond or Higginsport, which are all significant projects, I would be watching the ARC website And then hopefully maybe the village can also help our local businesses by promoting those, because in addition to Georgetown having these projects, a lot of our neighbors do as well. And I think a lot of our local businesses could benefit from bidding on those projects.
I hope, I mean, that would be good. I mean, it's, and I understand not all contractors are gonna be qualified, but they should at least be able to be aware that,
Absolutely.
you know, that they can be included too, so.
Yep.
Just wondering.
Yep.
So,
I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
all right.
Mr. Gelter? And again, when you come to the front, just state your name for the people viewing at home.
How y'all doing? My name's Jeff Gelter. I live on 63 Wall Street, Georgetown, Ohio. Lived here all my life. The problem I got here is still my sewer that they put in 2000, early 2000s. Outside my front ditch, there's a big sinkhole. And this sinkhole just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. They come and fix it. I mean, there's been as concrete put in it, 4-inch rock put in it. It's gone today. You know, they keep coming, digging it out, which Tommy and all them, they do an excellent job doing it, but they can only do so much. And this problem occurred ever since they put this new sewer system on our street. And I'm the only one that's got the sinkhole. As of right now, my sinkhole is 6 foot deep, and probably about 5 foot wide.
When's the last time they put something in?
Last fall.
So since last fall, it's sank that much?
Mm-hmm. And
What's that address again? Sorry.
63 Wall. It's been like this for 15 years now. They just, huh? Well, they put in a new sewer system back in the early 2000s. And ever since then, this is my opinion. I mean, I'm not a contractor or whatever, but I think the old sewer line was cut out of there. And every time it rains or drains or whatever, all the dirt and everything goes into the old sewer line. That's what I'm thinking. But the old sewer line is in underneath the road. And plus, the road is caving in on my side.
So what we can do, so Kelly's not here tonight, but we can come back out.
And I have, I mean, numerous times
Mhm.
tried to get this thing fixed. And what's going to happen, I'm afraid that one of these kids is going to fall in it.
And maybe what we
And then
need
we're going to have problems.
to do is
And I don't want that.
consulting on it. to-
Yeah, we'll take a look at it
Yeah.
and we'll see where it's located, whose responsibility it is, and then also take a look at the road. And if it's affecting the road, it
Oh,
might
it's
be.
definitely affecting the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just want this thing fixed. You know, it just keeps, I mean, it might get full concrete tomorrow, but here in the next 6 months or so, it'll be gone. Cause I'm talking big rocks, Tommy and them guys can only do so much.
Right.
What's the biggest fill they put in there? Like how, in dimension wise? That you've
Well,
seen?
they first started off, when it first started, was 4-inch rock. Don't know how much. And then that disappeared. They concreted over that. That disappeared. They threw more rock over top of it. That disappeared.
A fairly large slab of concrete they poured over in that area.
I don't know how much, but it was concreted. Yes.
All right.
See, a lot of times I'm at work and then, these guys work day shift too. And when I get home, it's fixed but the last time they investigated, I was off and we dug that whole yard off, trying to find this leak or whatever it is. We couldn't find nothing. So we just gave up on it. We filled it all back in with regular dirt and stuff. And now here we are again. It's gone.
Well, I will, I don't know that Kelly's going to be in tomorrow, but definitely by Monday, I will get a hold of him and Tuesday, and get a hold of him and make sure that we get out there
Get
and,
this fixed.
yeah.
I mean, before these kids end up disappearing,
Yeah.
Which might be a good place for him, but I don't know. All right, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Former council member Mark Anderson, good evening. Again, state your name.
Hello, my name is Mark Robert Anderson. I don't change, I still have my pop. Anyway, I was on this council for 15 months. I appreciate the voters who voted for me very, 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 very much. Democracy is very important. It's the cornerstone of what makes the United States the United States. When I was on council, I remember a little bit. I wish I didn't remember any of it, but I remember a little bit. Art talked about making Cherry Street a one-way where there would only be one way of traffic. I don't know where that is, but I remember Art bringing that up. And I don't know the finances anymore, but I remember when I was on council, the budget was kind of tight. Council might want to think about, when the public might want to think about running a police levy or doing an income tax, whatever, to support the police. Because if we have a lot more traffic, we're going to need a lot more police. And and I'm totally nonpartisan here, if the police say they're underpaid, there's only one way to get more money, and that's taxes. And again, I'm totally non-political here. Also, kids listen to me. When I was on council, I always spoke to the kids. Before I was on council, I spoke to kids. Susan Bean brought up an idea of a crematorium or something for the graveyard or cemetery, because when we get landlocked, which isn't going to be too much in the future, decades, which isn't too far, what are we going to do with all these dead bodies in Georgetown? A crematorium, I might be saying the wrong word. Joe, am I saying the wrong word? Okay, crematorium. Anyway, look that up, kids. It's cheap. Right now, if we're looking in the future, I would buy your burial. If I was a parent, I'm not, thank God. Thank God for the kid too. But anyway, if I was a parent, I'd buy the burial spot now, because in the future, it's going to be very, very, very expensive. My last thing I want to say, and the whole reason I'm even here tonight, is the Grant Association, well, not Grant Association, whoever those people were, in the South. Now, I'm big on history. I read a lot of books. At my office at Burger King, I read every day. If you don't believe me, come look, and I'm reading a political book. I'm big on history. U.S. Grant was, I guess, a great president. Mixed reviews on that. But in the South, they took out statues of Robert E. Lee. They took out statues of Nathan Bedford Forrest. Kids, you might not know that name. Look it up. He wasn't a good man. They took out statues of Jefferson Davis to try to remove the history of that era of those kind of people. Let's not forget, because if we don't remember history, it's going to repeat itself. It always does. So why don't we make a statue and say, this is what U.S. Grant was fighting against? Nathan Bedford Forrest, he was a leader and founder of the KKK, and he also was defeated by Ulysses S. Grant, according to a book I read. Let's not forget history. The last thing I want to say is Georgetown Public, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, you're looking at something I will never do again. Be on council. these people demand a lot of respect because whatever they do, it's not going to be right in somebody's eye. And the public doesn't understand what some of the grants are for. They think they can just put grants up and that this council can do whatever with the money. Dummies, it doesn't work like that. I'm on this side of the counter now. I can say what I want to say. I've been hit twice by cars. Once when I was 3, once when I was 20. I'd rather get hit by another car than be on this council again. That's how much respect I have for all these people. By the way, I'm not inviting anyone to hit me. Joey, you're on call.
Thank you, Mark. All right, back of the room, we're going again. Any, just observing, okay. Fantastic, thank you. All right, Mrs. Berkmeyer, please just make sure you state your name and you have 5 minutes.
They turn it on.
It's on. Just start talking.
Doesn't look like it, but. All right, my topic of discussion, my name's Amy, by the way. Most of you know me, some of you don't. For the ones that you don't, I've been here since 1991, so been here for a while. After the last general work session, I spoke with Kelly Jones in reference to leash law, Cooper law, and he said that he would address it. I did notice the dog, and is it the Slacks that live on the corner? It was the Slacks dog, and I actually addressed him and asked him if he could keep his dog off of my property, and he said that he would do his best. Kelly said that he would talk to the police and see if he could resolve that. I was just checking to see if there's been anything taken care of on that.
I don't know what you're referring to. The dog get loose or something?
It was not on a leash, yes.
Yeah, I'm not aware.
I spoke
I'm
with
aware
you
of the dog,
over at
but I don't
UDF
know
about
that
it.
specific case. I'd have to look.
I spoke with
I
you over
haven't
at
dealt
UDF
with
as
it
well.
personally. What's that?
I spoke with you as well over at UDF after I spoke with Kelly.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Unfortunately,
what you're
they-
referring to with that
Yeah.
case. Like I said, I
Okay.
can look into it.
Anyway, I just wanted to see what I need to do to follow up with that too. So I don't know who I need to address. Continue to wait for Kelly. Is he out on vacation?
As far as if she sees somebody without a dog on a leash, what should she do, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you can contact the police department, the non-emergency number, and let them know. Kelly may have addressed this. He's out because of a death in the family. So,
Jones had also said that he's seen the dog as well.
yeah.
Off of-
I mean, calling up to the administration building, obviously the administrator can reach out to the police as well. So I think you've let the right people know, but he's just out unfortunately tonight. So he should be back on Tuesday from their family services.
How long should I expect to wait for results?
All right, you can contact him anytime.
Well, and I think the moral here is that if you do see a dog that's out that,
The reason I'm addressing it now, this has been like ongoing for several years before I've addressed it.
Right.
I've just reached the point of, I'm tired of somebody else's dog poop on my
Okay.
property.
So then, I mean, again, that
I
would
mean, since
be,
like 2020,
that would be something that you would call the non-emergency line for when it's happening. They could come out and respond and go through their
well, I've
protocol.
addressed it. I've addressed it to Callie Jones. I've addressed it to the police here as well in a public meeting.
Mhm.
So that's not something I have to call and address on every single issue, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what you have to
Yes.
do. You have to call every time it happens.
yes.
Okay. Which number do you want me to call?
4155. 378-4155 is our non-emergency dispatch.
I had addressed an issue with Rob within the past few years as well. He said it wasn't his responsibility, so I'm just trying to clarify whose responsibility it is. And that was over on the road beside the old hospital. There was a couple of pit bulls up there that day, and I had called the Georgetown number, and it went to 911, and then Rob came around and pulled up, and we talked about it, discussed it, and I'm just trying to make sure that I understand who, because I would think I would need to contact the police.
That's
Yeah.
where you, when you call the non-emergency line, that's where it goes.
But I didn't get any results back then either. And then in regards to Stan's comment that the village has assisted with all of the murals within the community. Mike, did the village assist you with your murals? Delbert, did the village assist you with your mural? Okay, thank you. And in reference to the historical sites and the historical district, the village kind of, in my personal opinion, when they brought the Merchants Bank in, kind of changed the dynamics of the historic district within the community. That's just my personal opinion. And that was a council decision, correct? And on the income tax, you said that was the state puts the responsibility on the individuals, correct, for the income tax? Okay.
You're ultimately responsible to file it.
Correct. But years ago, when the village changed it from 0.5% to 1%, accountants weren't even notified. So half of the year as businesses, we had to eat that expense because we still had to pay it. And I don't think businesses appreciate that kind of leadership within the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Purdy, would you like to address council?
Yes. I think I'll stand because I may not be able to get up if I sit down. First, let me apologize for being so passionate about the plans that were explained later. And I certainly will make an effort to get our organization involved in the planning. I had two other things though. We had an incident involving a young man that was staying at the bed and breakfast a couple of weeks ago. And I want to compliment the chief and a couple of officers that were on the morning force. They responded to our situation, and without exception, they used wisdom, tolerance, patience, and just extraordinary poise in dealing with the situation. And it was resolved, so far as I know at this point, satisfactorily, and I would say clearly by virtue of the work of the officers that responded. The other thing is, with exception of 2 or 3 years before the 1976 celebration of our country, Georgetown has never had a community celebration for the 4th of July. Now, I'm not talking about the village officially, but no organization has really stepped up to do something. In fact, the saying has always been that when people in Georgetown want to celebrate the 4th, they go somewhere else, which is true. Well, the Grant Association and the Courthouse Square Committee have joined on plans, and hopefully we get it done, planning a 4th of July celebration. And this is going to be at the fairgrounds, or parts of it at the square, and I think parts at the fairgrounds. This is important not only for Georgetown, but in 2 years, 2026, there will be a major celebration encouraged by the state of Ohio to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And we'll all be probably involved in that over the 4th of July. The point I'm getting to, I know you've dealt with this before, maybe this last year, about fireworks. The association and the Courthouse Square Committee are joining together to do the fireworks for the 4th of July celebration at the fairgrounds. Now, hopefully all of you and myself, we all enjoyed the fireworks coming up behind the courthouse the 2 years we've done it, but it doesn't appear that that's practical and probably not so safe. And we decided to join with the Courthouse Square Committee and do it somewhere else. So my task here tonight is to ask that you consider helping our group, two groups, with some fireworks money. We are soliciting from local businesses. We have some funds in. There's other businesses we need to talk to, which I'm involved with. The last time I did it, I was pretty successful in raising money for the fireworks. But Carol Myers tells me that it's increased cost just like everything else. But we'd like to have a help of $6,000 for the fireworks. Now, they're going to cost more, and we're raising that money from businesses and other sources. But you don't need to decide tonight. I'm sure you'll need to talk about it and look at the budget and so forth, but it would be a big help. And I think you would be proud of the celebration that we do for the 4th of July.
Is that something that you're gonna light off on the square? Is that the intention, or at the fairground?
Yeah.
So it'll be this year at the fairgrounds though, right? Okay.
Right. It, like I said, we enjoyed it from the square, but it's just not feasible to do.
So if we push this to our work session agenda, which would be in 2 weeks, would that be a reasonable time? Okay. I think that would be something that we could discuss during work session. Is everybody good with that? So Tara, if you can add that. And then is it best to reach out to you, Stan? Are you the best person? Do you want us to reach back out to you once we come to a decision?
Ned.
Okay.
Ned has a meeting tonight, 3 nights here.
Okay.
And again, like I was saying, I apologize for being so passionate about it,
Fine.
but you know why. I had a dream when the Grand Association put me in charge of the fireworks when we were going to do it ourselves, hopefully like we had been doing it. And I had a dream, which turned out to be a nightmare, that they did them behind the courthouse and one went astray and went into Judge Gusweiler's office. And that really, it was a totally a nightmare, but it put me on the straight and narrow.
Changed your thought about it.
All
Well,
right, well, thank you all.
thank you, and we will certainly reach out to you. Ms. Dahlbach, anything? No, good. Delbert,
We got enough time tonight?
you have 5 minutes.
Everybody else got way more than that.
Ah,
You're as bad as Dale.
ah.
He keeps cutting me off. I get comp time somewhere. When that guy was talking about that sinkhole, that's exactly what happened, because I dug a fence post one time for a gate, and the dirt kept washing away, and I finally realized that there used to be a pond there, and I had a drain for it. So it just keeps sucking the dirt away. So that sewer line's the problem. Now, the other thing that I came up here for tonight mostly was, out of this 8.6 million, how much of it can we decide what we want to do with it?
We have we have over 5, I believe. So the OHC has 1.8, and then the other piece of it, I guess we would have the majority of it, because carve out the OHC part of it, and then we have the say-so in the streetscape part and the welcome center. So those are the 2 other components of it. So that would be what we have technically, I mean, within reason. Like, we can't just say scrap that project and we want to go elsewhere and do X, Y, Z. No, it has to be in that realm, but we have say-so in design, and, if we want to modify to include the stage.
The ambulance that he needs.
Mm-mm.
Can't do that.
Nope, can't do it.
And what about sewer, water, and
Can't do it.
electric?
Nope, there are specific parameters for the grant, which is why we ended up where we were with what we submitted.
If that's what it says, it's just, we're spending on frilly stuff, and again, that stuff gets set back. The stuff that we really need gets set back. Just seems a shame. What kind of money are they talking about for this welcome center?
I know a lot of, I think it's like 1 to 1.5 million.
That's the streets and everything, all them squares.
No, no, that's separate. That's separate.
All that fancy.
I mean, yes, at the end of the day, it's just money being transferred around. And look who's going to be paying for it ultimately. I guess the caveat that I would say there is if we didn't apply for it and get it, it's going to be somebody else. So we should be competitive and take the grant money. If we're going to pay for it ultimately, let's put it where it impacts us the most.
Did somebody here actually apply? Or were we invited to apply?
Which, I mean,
We chose.
we've got the relationship with American Structure Point. Obviously, you heard that they were part of the lead engineers with the state. So obviously, it was a good connection to already have. But yeah, we chose to apply.
You're using my 5 minutes.
Still got a minute and 55 seconds, 54.
Anyway, I mean, it's a done deal. You're gonna have to spend it on that stuff. But I years ago, they talked about building Home Street all the way out. But nobody did any studies about where the ambulances are coming from, where the employees are coming from. Now, that was a different deal. They had some sort of small grant, but that had to be paid back. But in this particular case, I wonder what it'll actually really do for the village. This much or?
See,
I think his time should be extended for that interruption myself.
Do what?
I think your time should be extended for that interruption.
you've had your time. Anything else for us, Delbert?
That's about it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, did I miss anyone? Jan, she didn't want to go. Okay. All right, guys, so moving along, let's move into general business. And the first thing on your agenda is on page 2, approval of the April 25th council meeting minutes. Take a look at those if you haven't done so already. If there are any revisions, let's talk about it. If not, in a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept.
All right. Councilmember Campbell has made the motion to approve the meeting minutes with Councilmember Garbett seconding. Tara, roll call.
Councilmember Baki,
Yes.
Councilmember Fletcher,
Yes.
Councilmember Mays,
Yes.
Councilmember Campbell,
Yes.
Councilmember Barnhart,
Yes.
Councilmember Garbett.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Next item is on page 5. That would be the approval of the May 9th, 2024 work session meeting minutes.
Sorry, I kind of stapled them weird. It's my bad.
There, it's stapled.
Yeah.
Yeah, page 5 and 6 are flipped. Yes. Start with page 6 and flip back to 5.
Under public comments, that should be Kevin Miller, not Eric.
You looked at me for the name and I quickly rattled off the name. I apologize. Sorry. I remember that. Thank you.
No, you're fine.
All right. Any other edits? If not, we would entertain a motion as revised. Is that correct?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Baki has made the motion to accept the meeting minutes as revised with Councilmember, Amber Fletcher seconding the motion. Tara, roll call, please.
Councilmember Campbell, Councilmember Fletcher,
Yes.
Councilmember Garbett,
Yes.
Councilmember Mays,
Yes.
Councilmember Barnhart,
Yes.
Councilmember Baki.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Page 6, actually, wait, I apologize, step back. Let's talk about the bids for the basketball court. So Kelly, I know that you had brought some bids to the meeting last 2 weeks ago, potentially. And then actually brought one bid. And then Mike, I know you have been working on some bids too, so I will let the two of you kind of run with this conversation.
So you want to go first, Kelly?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I got back 2 different bids on that. The first one come back close to what Kelly had got there on that first bid. It was for $32,400. That's with a pump truck, and he can lower that price down by $1,500 if they remove the fiber and mesh, because he said that it really wasn't necessary, but he put it in the bid for fiber and mesh. So that would leave a total of $30,900 if we dropped that out of the concrete pour. The second bid came in at $19,000 to $20,000. So that's like extremely huge difference. And I'm not advocating for the person, but I do know both these people very well. Both of them I know have poured for 25, 30 years. Very reputable, both of them. That's with no mesh, no fiber. And on top of that 19 to 20,000, he did not figure a pump truck, so there would be $1,000 increase for that pump truck. So basically be at $21,000 for that second bid, which I think the original bid was $37,000. And then this second bid was $32,400. And then this bid here, the final bid was at $20,000. Also on that, there was a few things I wanted to add. I spoke with Dave Taylor that ran in the primary for Congress last week, met him at the Republican building, picked up some signs, actually dropped me some signs off over there. And I got to thinking, this guy owns a concrete company. So I asked him about if he would consider helping us with that concrete pour. He said that he would give us cost on the concrete. So roughly we're looking at $3,500, maybe $5,000 that we could take this $20,000 bid down on cost of concrete. So that almost cuts it down by $18,000. And then, again, Dave Taylor, wonderful guy, running for Congress here in Ohio. And then, so I need to meet with him if council approves this, so that I can clarify what that number is. But that gives you an ideal ballpark of what kind of money we can save by him doing that for us in the park. Also, there was a bid for, I think it was $700 or $7,500 for basketball rims. And I don't know if council would entertain this idea or not. I did speak with Kelly briefly about this, and I do have pictures of the basketball rims and basketball courts, but I've been doing a little bit of work through ABCAP. And I met with them to give a price on a job the other day over at the old Alverta Reed School in the gymnasium. And they have 2 beautiful basketball rims there that are mounted from the ceiling. And Dave Wickram, the supervisor over all of that over there, he told me that if we needed them for our park, that they would give them to us free of charge. Now, there's going to have to be a couple things done because they don't have stances. They come off of the wall or ceiling. But I did go ahead and reach out to Keith Thomas of Thomas Welding, a local business that we could put some work to. And he said that that would not be a problem to retrofit stances on them if we chose to go that route. So I'm just giving you guys what I found, and then there was one other. No, that would be it. That's it. So I don't know if we're looking to, approve a total, but I'll tell you, I'm so confident in this guy, I would pay the difference to have it tore out and redone. That's how confident I am that this guy will do a great job for our park. And we're looking, like I said, roughly $17,000, $18,000 we can save just on the concrete alone. No, I take that back. We could save roughly $20,000 on the concrete alone after you subtract what Mr. Taylor was generous enough to offer to do on the concrete. And then on top of that, we could save tremendously on the basketball rims if we did decide to go the route. Now, I understand new is nice, but we do have a lot of things out there going on out the park. And I just figured if we could save some money on that, I mean, we're talking, I think we were talking like around $50,000 to do it with these original bids. I mean, we could potentially shave this down to, at worst, 25,000. So we're talking 25 more thousand in the general funds left there to put toward the park for other things like playground equipment and things like that. I think it's a wonderful idea to look at this and maybe move the vote on it if possible. Also, the guy for $20,000, the company that bid that project, they said they should be able to do it by June, the second to third week of June. So timing is wonderful too, really. I mean, I think they were talking July, the other gentleman was given the bid. So it even gets us there closer to where the kids can enjoy it for the summer.
So one of the things that Joe,
I'd rather not open my mouth about the names right now, but I mean, I can send them to you.
one of the things that Joe mentioned to me as you were talking is that we can't vote on anything without a written bid.
Right.
Just because of transparency, we have to have the name and then to the specs that they're working off of. 'Cause if there's an issue.
Well, I guess my concern, I could have got that and I apologize that I didn't, and I can get that pretty immediately, like I don't know if we need to, I'd hate to wait another 2 weeks just because in 2 weeks we're going to be in June and then this guy's going to be backed up too. You know what I mean? So how will things land for timing for the park with it being summertime? So I don't know if we could come together and do something special, a quick brief meeting to approve something, but I can have everything together by Monday of next week with that. And I'm sure I can get a hold of Dave Taylor and verify. I know it's 52 yards roughly, so he can give me that total number that we're going to save. So you'll know also then, how much we're going to save on the concrete, because this price that he gave is the concrete with it. So that number is going to lower that 20,000 substantially. I don't know how you want to go about doing that. And I apologize that I didn't have it.
I'll go ahead and add a little bit. The original quote that I had, somebody shoot me was a 52 by 76 dimension. That dimension, for if you figure 4-inch thick slab, it's 48 plus yards. So the general contractor is going to charge about $200, so that's $9,660. I would assume that if Taylor's cost is probably half of that. So I have no problem. I think, so I was just throwing out an option of a guy that I knew could save money with kind of a rough idea. I'm confident that Mike's guy would do a good job. So I agree that would save us a lot of money. So I want to talk about the basketball goal a little bit. I did reach out to a guy who they did a similar thing. They had a building in Adams County they tore down. They took a very nice goal that's been inside for 30 plus years. It looked mint. They had a company come in and do just what you talked about, and they blamed it on the sun because it was inside its whole life. It cracked, like the plexiglass, or what they said, through just stress. I don't know, and the sun and the cold, they act like it lasted a couple seasons. So I think Bink had done a lot of legwork on the basketball goal setup and what they had done, and Bink can jump in at any time. The company does like a cantilever setup, so they go and bore a hole out in the yard, pour it full of concrete, anchor it, and then these goals are, tested and, warranted and all that. And then they put it in, so that goal could be put in after the concrete. It would not affect. So my guy was thinking that it was just an anchor system you kind of put down in the concrete. So just from talking to that guy, he suggested they become brittle, and it's just he suggested not to do it. So
I could say something too. I mean, those are fiberglass backboards and they're great, but all it takes is a brick and it's ruined. I mean,
What are the ones that
they're
suggesting?
They're steel backboards, and they do have a warranty, and it would remove liability if we take something out there and build it and kind of rig it up. I'm just saying that's something we don't really want to cut money on. Is something that is going to be safe, and that's where my concern would be. I mean, I know it'd be great, but if someone goes out there with a rock, I mean, people slam dunk on them all the time and they break, they shatter. So they're those are indoor. I wouldn't recommend them. I mean, the other pieces of concrete stuff, I don't know, but.
I don't know, I've had a plexiglass, not that I'm trying to deter that, but I've had a plexiglass when my son and both my kids, all four of my kids have played on outside for years. I guess I would just want to know what the material is and if the guy knows what material we're talking about, and not trying to knock him, but he's a sales guy trying to sell us one too, is all I'm saying. Other than that, I mean, I think we're saving money on the concrete, which is going to help a lot one way or the other. I'm just going for the goal. I want to get what we can saved from the general fund as much as possible, because we've got a lot of things to address out there. So, and what you said earlier, Kelly, even if we got 2 years, I know that's very little, but I don't think to build the stances would cost that much. I mean, I think it would be minuscule compared to the time we could get out of them. But again, I don't know the material. I'm just, I know our basketball rim we've had for at least 15 years, and it's of the same material, and it's been outside, and we haven't had that problem.
So,
That's like $7,000 for that, right? $7,500.
so there's a few choices here. Did you have something being?
Well, that's if we have them install them, it's around 75. If we don't, it's $5,000, but then we have to get them installed.
So it's $2,500 for them to set them and put them in place?
So we're kind of at a point, so, Mike has has done some work to find some bids as well. So we've got Kelly that has a bid. We did have that in writing, correct? Or no?
What I might suggest, it sounds to me like there's a bunch of pieces to this. Maybe if you and Mike work together to come up with what I'll call a package, maybe, a written bid from Sardinia on the concrete. You guys decide who you want to, it's just under our bidding threshold. So you can bring who you want. The two of you maybe, I don't know if they were doing it as a committee, but maybe bring it to the whole council that, we want to do the installation from here, buy the board from here, the concrete from here as a package, and maybe bring it back to the next council meeting, whether that's a special meeting or a regular meeting, and then present that. That would be my best suggestion, because we can build that right into a resolution and adopt it that way. You're not limited though to one contractor. If we've got someone else in the community that says, hey, I want to do this component of it, why don't you just prepare it and then we'll put it into legislation and adopt it.
I could reach out to, when I saw the basketball goals and the description of it, what caught my eye was, I thought it, like I said, was a recessed anchor in the concrete. And he used the word bobcat and auger. So what's that tell you? You're going to dig a hole. So I reached out to him. I can call him again and kind of get in a little fine detail. So I can do that. And then you already have that whole paperwork that he just freshly wrote up.
Well, I know you mentioned also about how them basketball courts or them would have like a stance that came out and then come down to where the child wouldn't potentially run into it. And I took that with me when I spoke with Keith, because I wanted to get something similar to what you were talking about. And he said it was absolutely doable. So, I mean, as far as the safety of, a child running off and hitting that pole because of it being close, he said that's not a big deal for them to build that either. Now, again, I know you guys are talking about that other way, and I can totally respect. We all want the best for our kids, but at the same time, I'd love to have extra swings and playground equipment out there too. So, and that's a huge difference in number.
So would you guys agree to kind of working to finalize maybe it's can the three of them?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. All three of you.
Think, and because it sounds like we're not at a point to act.
So, yeah, I mean, if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. Let's get it done. We're kicking it down the road. So
Well, I'd like to see something happen next week if we could possibly put something together. I mean, because as far as timing for this too, we can have this by the 2nd of June if we don't wait another 2 weeks to do something.
We're gonna call a special.
And I apologize, this is my fault not having this part of the piece.
The other part of that is, I completely believe that Mike has the better bid here. I'm not trying to push my guy at all. I just reached out to a person that I knew would step up. So I am fine with, if you can get that, I'm fine with getting that concrete stuff already started. That will not affect the basketball goal at all. So we could get that started instantly. Because, you know, it takes concrete a long time to cure before you do anything anyway. So I say we get that started as soon as, now what does he have to do to get that
The
part?
concrete meaning just from Sardinia?
No, the contractor to come in and do the work in total. So he would be presenting Mike with an estimate, and then Mike would go ahead and either talk to Mr. Taylor or.
If
Basically, would split his, when this comes back, Joe, I believe what I will do is I'll go back to my guy and I'll say, look, I just need you to give me the price on your tear out and your pouring of it, and we'll negotiate with Sardinia Concrete for the price. And then he'll pull his number out of here, which Kelly was really close on the money. It's around 10 grand. So basically his job would cut this price, would cut from the concrete. Doug would just give us a contract on his labor and his tear out. And then we would have a price through Sardinia Concrete through Dave Taylor to.
If we're worried about timing and you want to get that moving, we could do a motion to authorize Mike to negotiate an agreement that I could look over and we could just keep it moving in an amount not to exceed.
Yes.
Sounds like $20,000.
I think it'll be well under that number by the time we get to
Right, it
concrete.
could be an amount not to exceed, and that would give the authority that we would need to move forward with that component of it. As far as the basketball goals go, it sounds like you still need to check on that, and we could bring that back to the next meeting.
And I would say, my vote would be no to that plan. It's just not, I like the idea of saving money, but I would much rather it be something that's gonna be durable and safe, even if we have to spend some money on it. So however you wanna look at it, if you guys wanna pursue that, I'm perfectly fine with that. I just don't think an inside basketball goal is gonna be satisfactory for what we need up at the park.
And in all respect, Bink, what I will do is I will go and find out that material, and I will do some background on how well that material holds up to the weather and the elements, because I'm looking at $1,500 as opposed to $7,500, and that's a huge difference. And I don't know, you were talking one of them playground pieces of equipment costs what, $10,000?
Yeah, we've already got some money earmarked for that, we've got
Right.
23,000, I think, ready for that. So that's something that we can do. We just wanted to get this taken care of first, and then we were gonna move to that. So if you wanna get that information, that's perfect, but I just don't think it's gonna work, but prove me wrong, and I'll go with it.
Sounds good.
So
We make a motion to do what you said, Joe?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to, what's the wording on this? To authorize that Mike Mays can go ahead and get the concrete bid and everything in. It will be under our threshold, and then you can submit it to.
An amount not to exceed 20,000, and we'll negotiate the agreement.
Can you get specs on how that's gonna be poured?
just a second, Delbert, they're in the middle of a motion.
Yeah, not to exceed 20,000, and then you can just directly give that to Joe, and however that needs to.
Make part of that motion to get the specs that Delbert's talking about, like, so we have all the information that we need, or?
Well, I think you give them to me. Basically, it was a 4-inch thick pour.
Guys, we don't have a second, so,
Okay.
We need someone to
I'll make that second.
Okay, now it's discussion.
okay, now,
Can we amend that motion to say that we have all of that information in there?
Of course.
somebody's gonna have to restate this.
So, sorry. You want to?
Actually, the size you gave me was larger than the size you got bidded. If you recall, you said 80 foot earlier, you stated it was 76 foot. Not that matters. We'll have a 4-inch wider slab.
Okay. I will withdraw the motion, and I will provide you with the same specs that I have, and then that way you can get everything estimated, presented. and then hand it to Jeff.
Okay.
So we're clear, the motion then is a motion to authorize Mike to negotiate an agreement in amount not to exceed $20,000 for the construction of the new basketball pad, subject to the dimensions and specs you'll provide.
Yes.
And we need a second.
I'll second that.
Who made that motion?
I did.
So you withdrew the original one.
Yes.
Did you catch that?
Joe, can you say the last part of that one?
And it will provide the specs.
To exceed 20,000.
Oh, in an amount not to exceed $20,000,
And provide specs.
and that Councilmember Campbell will provide the specifications for the project.
So Councilmember Campbell has properly made the motion. Councilmember Mays has provided the second. Tara, when ready,
Chair, hang on real
Oh,
quick.
discussion.
Yes, I have, real quick, I'll make it clear for everyone. So the specs and dimensions was already in from last year's proposal. So everything in there, this is not something made up. This was the dimension already authorized, the thickness, everything about it. So there's nothing, it's a normal, this is just a normal slab. There's nothing crazy going on. So
Yes.
it'll have everything that was already spec'd out according to the last bid that they worked on last year with the administrator and whoever was involved. So, yes.
Are the specs available? Like,
We will have them available at the next meeting or the special meeting if we choose to push for that.
We won't need to if we approve this motion.
Okay. Well, I will have them though, but before we spend anything.
Any other discussion? Tara, roll call.
Councilmember Campbell,
Yes.
Councilmember Mays,
Yes.
Councilmember Baki,
Yes.
Councilmember Fletcher,
Yes.
Councilmember Garbett,
Yes.
Councilmember Barnhart.
Motion passes. All right, thank you, guys. All right, final item under general business is on page 6, you'll see an agreement.
Sorry, it's page 8.
Page 8, I apologize, I wrote it by the wrong one. Page 8, you'll see an agreement for our tax clerk, Catherine McElroy. Since Catherine is a contract employee, when we did the merit increase, the only way to give her a merit increase is to revise her contract. So the only reason we're looking at this is because her contract needed to be adjusted by the 3% increment that we did merit. So Kelly Campbell, I will need you to read this by title.
A resolution approving an agreement with Catherine McElroy to serve as a tax commissioner for the Village of Georgetown.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, Councilmember Mays has made the motion to approve this resolution with Councilmember, I am not good, Barnhart approving. Any discussion? Tara, roll call.
Councilmember Campbell,
Yes.
Councilmember Barnhart, Yes. Councilmember Fletcher,
Yes.
Councilmember Mays,
Yes.
Councilmember Baki,
Yes.
Councilmember Garbett.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, guys.
Resolution 1379.
All right. All right, on page 11, you'll see a listing of your payment register. If there are any questions, we will attempt to answer those. If not, we will defer those and get back to you with Greg answering. Page 13 is your mayor's court report as well. And then on page 15, you have an update from our code enforcement officer. So zoning update. Looks like he's been fairly busy with grass and weeds. All right, and then if there are no questions on that, we will move along to roundtable. And we will start down here to my left with Councilmember Baki.
Just a couple brief things. Congratulations to all the graduates out there. The CTC had their graduation. Georgetown's had their several other schools. So good luck to everybody. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Fletcher?
I have nothing to Councilmember Scarlett?
Yeah, I have just a couple of things. One is, so I wanted to start something. It seems like there's a lot of information that's out there that just seems to get misconstrued or some misinformation out there sometimes. And I wanted to start something, and I'm just calling it Coffee with Council. And every third Thursday of the month, I'm going to make myself available, and maybe if one of the other council members or the mayor or someone else would want to be there, we could be there to meet the public. I'm thinking about having it at the Coffee Loft. I've talked to Shannon, and I'm hoping to have it there. I haven't gotten a 100% confirmation on that. But that way you can maybe bounce some ideas off of us. If you have things, hopefully everyone can be friendly and we can talk about things. And then if there's some things that we can get out there to you to help, maybe clear some things up sometimes, we can do that. Of course, when we do that, we'll be speaking on our own behalf, not necessarily on behalf of the council. But I just, there are a lot of people out there who have good ideas. There are a lot of things out there that people out there who have things that they need to be heard. Maybe they can't get to a council meeting all the time. So I just wanted to make myself available. I'll put that out on Facebook and some other things as well. So hope you can do that. Also started talking to some people about the 5-year park plan committee. If anyone wants to be a part of that, reach out to me and I'll be glad to talk to you about it and get you some more information. That's all I have.
Thank you. All right. Kelly Campbell?
No, I had a couple things for Kelly Jones, but I'll get with him.
All right. Councilmember Barnhart?
Not this time.
Councilmember Mays?
Exciting things coming to town. Just wanted to announce, and I can't find the date here of it when it's supposed to start, but Amber's working on it. She didn't mention it earlier, but the farmer's market on the square is coming. That was a big
I didn't
thing a
have a
long
big
time.
date,
Yeah.
a specific date yet, but we're thinking the 8th.
Okay. Like to announce that, make people aware of it. And other than that, I had one question about what Bink mentioned earlier. As far as meeting at the Coffee Loft, how's that work? I know that there's constraints there. And we got to be aware of that, how do we go about that? Because I don't want to come up there and I guess we probably ought to get together if we do that.
Coordinated a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, Councilman Garvin had asked me about that, and I told him the only restriction is we can't exceed 3 members of council on any one time. So he suggested maybe a rotation, kind of more like an open house, so that we don't have an official meeting. If we did want to make it so that all council members were present, we would need to advertise and keep minutes. That's not the purpose of that. So I think his suggestion when I talked with him is we'll just never exceed the permitted number. And if we rotate where you did that, then it would be permissible. And it's voluntary as well.
Other than that, that's it.
All right. Any items from our solicitor?
Yeah, on behalf of our administrator, Kelly Jones, he and I had talked this morning. I'm excited because I like doing them, but we're going to have a couple more annexations coming through, which is exciting. Anytime we can build our municipal borders and increase our revenue, that's a good thing. And obviously, one of the reasons that the individuals reached out to us is they want to take advantage of our services for water and sewer, which is a great thing because that also helps our utilities and expands that footprint. So I just wanted to let people know that you'll be seeing those probably in your June, if not early July meetings.
Fantastic.
Can I ask one question about that real quick? When we annex in, do then people can ultimately convert to our sewer system, or do they stay on their septics, or how does that work? Because I know that there was an issue constantly that I've heard about over the last 3 years about our situation with the sewer.
I would obviously defer to Derek or one of the other people in our utility department, but what I would tell you is typically, if you're within the geopolitical borders of the community and we construct a line that runs by your house, you're required to tap into it. But remember, we also have consumers right now that are not in the village who are receiving our services. So it really isn't a matter of whether you're in the village, it's more a product of where our lines run. But obviously, our goal would be to always have lines for everyone in the village. So, but if you're in the village, you are required to do it if we have a line there.
All right. Assistant Chief Enlow, anything for council?
I got a couple things. I'm going to do the Cliff Note version of them real quick, okay? All right. Just wanted to say that we completed our agreement with the elementary school with our shared space, having an office there. It's going to give us more presence, having a car there and an officer in the schools. I'm just further building on that relationship, which that's a cool opportunity. I see more opportunities coming in the near future with that. Kyle Luther, one of the officers here, took an initiative to do a junior police academy, had 10 students sign up. It's a 5-day course, 3 to 4 hours a day. They'll be going over things like handcuffing, pepper ball, traffic crash investigations, mock traffic stops. So that's a pretty cool thing for the kids to be able to see. New reporting system that we're currently been working on. We're onboarding on that now, finalizing that with the state. Completely free for us. It's definitely going to help us with our operations, our evidence room, different things with leads and criminal investigations, things like that. Ramping up business checks, had some businesses get some copper stolen from them out of their air conditionings. So we're trying to do more to be seen more for the businesses. So keep an eye on your stuff. When it comes to that, we had some weed eaters and things like that stolen. Another reminder just to keep things like your yard equipment locked up, put up. I call those opportunist thieves. They're not usually thieves that will steal from you unless you put it out in the front yard for them to steal. So just a reminder on that. As far as the department goes, we've just been assessing equipment, cleaning, getting rid of old things like that. We're going to be in a position now where we're going to start purchasing some stuff to make the department run better. Some real quick highlights on some cases, and this is a hot one. I don't want to spend too much time on this one, but it's the Ricky Horn case that we have here in town. Without getting too far in depth in it, it's a double-edged sword for us because he has the same amount of rights as everybody else, as I do, and the same amount of rights as everybody in the village. Some of the things that he's doing is things that maybe we might not like or we see as weird. He has the right to do those as long as he's not committing a crime or anything like that. A lot of calls that we get, I've instructed my officers to respond to the scene, ask him if he's okay, ask him if he needs any mental help, any type of assistance. Every time we go to him, he says he don't need any assistance, he don't need any help. We've provided him with food if he needs it. We provide him with water. We check and make sure that he's not doing anything criminal or any of that nature. If he is found to be doing anything criminal, or just like anybody else, we will get a warrant and arrest him, which is what we did. We had somebody videotape him trespassing on somebody's property and demanded that they wanted something done with it. They wanted to press charges. We filed for a warrant. We arrested him, took him to the jail. They refused to take him. We had to release him. So it's kind of an endless circle. But with what he's doing on the sidewalks and the things that he's doing, as long as he's not committing a crime, to my knowledge, we can't do anything. Now as far as his, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but as far as mental stability goes, he's been cleared from Claremont County. He's been cleared from Beckett Springs. He knows what he's talking about. I think a lot of what he's doing is trying to bait us, and he's trying to bait people. I think he likes the attention a lot. So I think that's about 90% of what's going on there. Now, Joe, I know Chief has reached out to you about some possibilities in the future, and I don't know if you've got anywhere on that, but we're taking a lot of heat as half the village says we're not doing enough. The other half says we're doing too much, but I've got a responsibility to protect us from liability, but I also got a responsibility to protect his rights and everybody else's. Do you have any?
Yeah, I'm not going to speak publicly on it, but
Okay.
I did have a couple of suggestions for the chief, so I can talk to you about that.
Okay. As far as that goes, I got a couple more cases real quick. We've had some scam alerts in the village. We had one business that people are calling businesses and saying that either that they've got warrants or that they're with their parents and they want them to take the money out of the store and go up to other stores and scan that money in and put on business cards. There will be never a time where a police officer asks you to transfer money over the phone, ask you for any information or anything like that. If you ever suspect anything like that, to hang up the phone and call the police and have them respond to your location. We had another incident where the people was scammed about $1,400. So people are listing the empty houses here in the town. Somehow people are putting posts online to rent that house out, and people are paying the deposit on the house to somebody that don't even own the house. They're not even in this town. So again, don't pay anybody for something that you didn't see or physically see a contract or anything like that. This last case, this just happened last night. A male was released from the jail. He was walking around the communication center causing an issue, screaming and yelling. They called the police. Police showed up, and somehow the guy ended up in the bowling alley. Sergeant Green responded into the bowling alley, seen the male. He fled out the front door. Sergeant Green followed him out. They got him detained beside the building. Got him in handcuffs. They're trying to figure out the situation. As Sergeant Green went back into the bowling alley, come to find out the guy had went in there, cleaned out the registers, so they kind of solved the crime before they even knew the crime existed. They got him. They were going to charge him with theft and criminal trespassing. The jail wouldn't accept him back, so we contacted the prosecutor's office, and they was able to find some additional charges to charge a felony on him and get him put in jail. So he's in jail now. Other than that, I'm going to shorten this list up, and that's all I got.
Thank you. Chief Rocky? Nothing? Okay. All right, one more item, just to run by you guys. We had received notification in the village that a local liquor license is having having a change done to it. So it's the First Stop gas station just right up here up the street. And essentially they are changing their liquor license to reduce it down by one name. And I'm trying to find that. There it is. Yes, I was just trying to look for where it was. Yes, so it originally was in the husband and wife's name, and now it's just in the husband's name. So that's the change to the liquor license. We don't have to take any action. The only action we could take is if we didn't want to allow that change to happen and we wanted to do something about the liquor license. So I wanted to just make sure I ran that by everybody. If anybody has an issue with this, speak up now. Otherwise, we are moving on. Okay. All right, upcoming meetings, next work session is on Thursday, June 13th. Again, work sessions are at 6 p.m. So that meeting again starts at 6 p.m. Outside of that, is there anything else for this council? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Mays has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Tara, roll call.
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Yes.
Councilmember Garbett?
Yes.
Councilmember Mays? Councilmember Barnhart?
Yes.
Councilmember Bakke?
Yes.
Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys. I gotta get out of here. I do. No, he was just gonna pass it.
I've got it.
Yeah.
They had it.